Welcome YouTube to a Narrative Crusades index card review. Today we will be looking at the Necron War Machine, focusing on their vehicles. Our Chapter Master Patreon exclusive campaign is live. A big thank you to all of our supporters so far. This initial campaign, called The First Bell, is a short campaign that will be a prelude to our full campaign in Segmentum Pacificus. It will be released in 2 weeks. Anyone listening to that can get involved. You will be able to influence the narrative through critical points. Our Patreons will be receiving 2 combat patrols this month as a thank you to the influx of support we have received. Not these 2 combat patrols. Any combat patrol that you choose, we will send to you as a thank you for your continued support. We also gave away a little sneaky bonus last month, again because we could, because of you. The vehicles of the Necron War Machine. The Necron technology is absolutely mental. It rivals the Aldari in power. If the Necrons actually got over their little 30,000 year power nap and woke up to actually dedicate themselves towards something other than sleeping, the galaxy would look very different. Here we can see a Necron command barge. This is a combat-loving Necron lord doing what he loves most, putting himself into a stupid position because he thinks he can kill things in close combat, which I'm going to let you know now he can't. This is a very dangerous hobby move for him. However, if we take a look at this one here, we can see the Doomsday Ark. Now, apparently this is a one-shot, one-kill weapon. Not one shot, one kill person, one shot, one kill army. Apparently, these things in the right place will destroy entire armies. In fact, if you look at something called the Tachyon arrow, which is not on a vehicle, some little dude carries it around on his wrist. If he fires that at you, he can destroy a Warlord Titan with that. In the book only. On the table, you'll just about take out a Space Marine. What else are they like in the lore? Well, let's have a look at the Monolith. These armoured battleships of death can descend from space. Their hulls regenerate from almost any damage. They have a huge amount of firepower. And not only that, but that little lovely door that you see there with a load of warriors walking out. Oh no, they're not inside, they're on another planet, and they are connected to the Necron homeworld, and they can summon an almost infinite amount of reinforcements. It gets more insane than that. In one of the books, some guy has got 100 monoliths in a little pocket vault. Where's he put his pocket vault? He's forgotten. He doesn't know where it is. He's forgotten the password. I'm not too sure. He's losing his marbles. A little bit like that Bitcoin billionaire who lost his USB. Bad life choices. What are they like on the actual table then? A little bit more sensible. But what are our Doctor Dooms? Which of our vehicles are going to be causing nightmares for our opponents and blasting them off the table? Let's start with the old classic croissant. The Doom Scythe. It's got toughness 9. That's not bad at all. To be honest, even melter weapons are going to be hurting that. On 4s, 3-up save is not too impressive, and 12 wounds does not speak the most for survivability. That's a bad save overall. Gun-wise, it's got a heavy death ray, which has got 3 attacks at strength 16, AP 4. That's very nice. D6 plus 1 damage as well. And if we're lucky, sustained hits. That's a heavy hitting gun. That's going to cause our opponent some problem, and with a movement of 20, we can put that where we want to do the most damage. But realistically, we have to face the fact that it's dead the next turn. Then we have the Twin Tesla Destructor. It is twin linked, so we are re-rolling wounds. It is sustained hits too, and if we shoot at infantry, it actually activates our atavistic instigation. We're not realistically going to get that with a heavy death ray, but we might. Now, what does that do? That gives our opponent a choice. We score critical hits on a 5+, which is good for our heavy death ray and Twin Tesla Destructor, but I kind of feel it's more likely that we're going to put our heavy death ray into a vehicle, at which point that 5+ critical doesn't come into play. Or our opponent is just going to go, well, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to take the -1 to hit, so you're hurting me less. So I think realistically, we're not going to benefit too much from that. Then let's look at the stats for that little twin Tesla Destructor. It's got 6 attacks, strength 7, AP 0, damage 2. It's useful, but realistically, it's quite fragile. The reason it's fragile is when we start to look at our other vehicles. So unfortunately, I think for me, the Croissant is out at the moment. Right, we've got our Annihilation barge. I think this is badly named. I think we need to rename it the Slightly Hurty barge. Why are we calling it the Slightly Hurty barge? We'll come to that when we look at the guns. Movement of 9 is quite good. Necrons are quite slow, so this gives us a little bit of speed. It lets us put our guns into position more likely. Toughness 8, I'd describe as average for a tank. 3 plus save and 9 wounds is quite good. It's 115 points. It's 140 points for 10 immortals. And I would say that this has a good deal more survivability than 10 immortals. When we consider that a Catan is 255, we could be rocking 2 of these Annihilation barges, but then we're approaching Catan territory. So is it worth it? Well, that's a bit of a roll-off and a choice for you. It is worth noting, however, that it has a 4-up invulnerable save. Okay, let's take a look at its guns. Firstly, we have the Gauss cannon. This is the underslung gun. It's strength 5, AP 2, 3 shots, damage 2. That's a reasonable gun, not the most shots in the world. Maybe you want to take a Tesla cannon instead. I think that's pretty much personal preference. Why are we here then for the twin Tesla Destructor? Sustained hits 2, twin linked, so we're re-rolling wounds. 6 shots. I think that's where this lost me. That is not the most shots on a vehicle. So we're looking at 9 shots a turn. That's not particularly many, especially when you say strength 8, which is good. We're wounding most infantry on 2s, our tougher infantry on 3s. But then we get to AP 0. We really have to start to wonder about how much this is going to kill. Some people like to look at the malevolent arcing. Now that used to be a strat, but that used to affect all units, including characters nearby. It does rely on our enemy being chunked up together. It is only on a 5+ are we going to be dealing these mortal wounds, and even then, it's only D3 mortal wounds. So you've got to roll a 5+ for it to go off, and then you've got to roll another 5+ for it really to be worth bothering with. So that's not a selling point for me. It's cute, but I think there's going to be better choices. Right, let's have a look at our Triarch Stalker. It's got legs, but it can move just as fast as our Annihilation barge. It's still toughness 8. It's got a 3+ save, but it's got more wounds at 12. With our reanimation protocols, we're going to be recovering significant wounds during the course of the game, especially when we start to look at some other combos towards the end of this review. It's got 3 different guns. We're only allowed to take 1. If we look at the heat ray, it's got 2 profiles, both of which are quite useful. It's got 2d6, basically heavy flamer shots. It's got ignore, cover, and torrent. Very nice. And then we have a heat ray focused, which is an 18-inch 2-attack, 3+ strength 9, AP 4, d6 damage gun. Basically a multi-melter. Okay, except it's got melter 4 at 9-inch range. That's quite nasty, but 9 inches is incredibly close. I'm going to skip the particle shredder. I'm going to come back to it. The twin heavy Gauss cannon, don't bother. Please, we had that discussion. Back to the particle shredder. This was a really cute gun. D6 plus 6 shots, blast. Blast means a lot of the time we're going to be adding 2 more shots. So it's D6 plus 8. If we roll a 3 or 4, that's 12 shots. It's got devastating wounds and it hits on 2s. So we're actually in the range of getting 2, if we're lucky, 3 mortal wounds out of this gun a turn. That is not bad. Plus, it then benefits from the targeting relay. That means that for the rest of the turn, that unit doesn't get cover. And everybody and his dog is getting cover at the moment because of the new rules. And now we can actually remove the potential for that save. So for 125 points, I quite like this little vehicle. I'm going to be putting mine back on the table. I used him a few times in the last edition as a style pick. He's coming back out. Next we have the War of the Worlds Walker. One of my favourite models from the last edition. I really like what they've done with this vehicle. It makes it much more reliable. So stats-wise, it's fairly fast at movement 7, but to be honest, you're probably going to want to be hanging back with it a little bit. Toughness 8 is nice, 3+ save is nice, and 12 wounds. Like a lot of the Necron vehicles, it has a 4-up invulnerable save, so we have other layers of durability there. And then we look at the weapons. It has a Doomsday Blaster. It has blast, it has heavy. The blast means we're probably looking at D6 plus 2 shots a lot of the time. That's quite nice. The heavy means we can mitigate our rubbish ballistic skill of 4 plus, and take it down to 3 plus. That's a bit unfortunate because it means that we have to stand still to be reliable, and we also can't ever be hitting on 2s. But strength 14, AP 3, and my favourite flat damage range, flat damage 3. Very nice. And then it's got this little twin gas flare that you're probably never going to bother with. It can overwatch and hit on 5s. I don't like that because D6 plus 1 hitting on 5s. If you roll a 1 on your random shots, you're getting sucked in now to spending loads of CP to hopefully roll some 5s. I'm sure one day maybe it'll win a game for me, but realistically, I'm not going to be using that ability very often. And if I do, it's probably because I'm desperate. Now, the real problem with the War of the Worlds Walker is you're probably going to want to take 3. It's 125 points a pop. And that would be considered good value for money until we look at Indy's favourite thing, their Doomsday Ark. Now, the Doomsday Ark is 185 points, so it's 60 points more for a vehicle that is faster, tougher, better armed, and has, if we're stationary, a better ballistic skill. It hits on 2s if we sit still, and then it gets devastating wounds on pretty much the same gun, except for the fact that there's only one thing that's better than flat damage 3, and that is flat damage 4, because now your Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, Terminators are dead again, finally. So, for not that many more points, 2 of these just seem better value for money. They also have the same firepower as a Warrior Squad. So, it's a big pick. Do I take 2 of these or do I take 3 War Walkers? I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm going to be running both, just depending on the game I play. Right, finally, the battleship, the Monolith. Its movement of 7, I was really excited for until I saw the new fly rules, because you have to be really careful. This unit had big issues last edition because you couldn't move it around the table, and now you still can't. So you're going to have to be really careful. It's got towering. I'm expecting some kind of nerf on that soon, so we'll see how that comes out. Toughness 14 is monstrous. 2 plus save is monstrous, and wounds of 20 is also monstrous. There's lots of ways for the Necrons to be getting 3d3 on their reanimation per turn through various buffs and other capabilities, which I'll talk about later. So that 20 wounds, if they're chipping you 5-6 wounds a turn, you're not going to care. If you take 10 damage, even then, you know you've probably got another 2 turns in which to do things. So what can it actually do? It's got 4 death rays. Yes, it's got 4 death rays. You're not going to bother with the gas flux arc because it just doesn't compare. Ballistic skill 3 plus is good. We have ways of getting that down to 2 if you watch my enhancements video. And then we've got a strength of 12. That's going to be wounding most things on 2s and 3s. AP4 is onto our invulnerable save, and D6 plus 1 damage is nasty. Sustained hits D3 means that if we do hit, we might get 1 through a turn. If we spike it, we might get 2, which could give us as many as 6 extra hits a turn. That would be absolutely horrific for anyone on the other side of that. Then we have the particle whip, which is blast, devastating wounds, 3d6 shots, strength 8, and damage 2. The only thing that's not impressive is the AP1. But when you're shooting 3d6 times at strength 8, damage 2, and devastating wounds, the AP is not the end of the world. This gun is horrible. So, as Bridger recently proved, you can overwatch with this guy. If you get lucky, you can kill 5 Terminators. I do not understand why it does not have an invulnerable save. I'm not saying it needs it. I just don't understand. Why does the taxi have an invulnerable save, but the battleship does not? Maybe it's the big hole in the middle. Maybe there's too much power going into that interdimensional portal. Oh, yes, the interdimensional portal. I'm afraid, guys, you can't bring in reinforcements from another planet. You can't even bring reinforcements from a nearby table. But the Eternity Gate does let you move around units on the actual table. You might not want to because you're just getting in the way, because this thing is even nasty in close combat. Don't forget tank shock on the charge. Then you've got 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 8, AP 2, and a lovely flat 3 damage again. This guy is expensive at 385 points. I don't care. I'm going to be taking him all the time. And if I'm scared, then I might consider working out how to put him in strategic reserves and then bringing him on later in the battle. Right, let's look at some style picks here. We have the Obelisk. We have a very impressive stat line here. Slow, unfortunately, but toughness 14, 2 up save, and 22 wounds. This is our no-fly zone vehicle. We can't move it very much. At the moment, it doesn't matter with towering. Anything that's flying near us, this guy is getting 24 shots a turn. Strength 7, AP 0, always wounded on a 4+. That sounds quite good, but to be honest, what are we shooting with flying that is higher than toughness 7? There's not that many things, and when we do, they tend to have quite good armor saves. So unfortunately, this is very much a style pick. It's a lovely model. Unfortunately, it's also a very expensive model and probably not that useful. However, this vehicle does look amazing. I have one. It was not painted by me. It was painted by a fantastic artist. It is brilliant. If you want to see it on the table, drop some comments, because that's the only thing that's going to convince me to put it out there. Why is that? Because even though it is a beautiful model, even though it is stunning, it is 425 points. What do we get for our 425 points? We get an incredibly large target that is very difficult to move around. It does have 24 shots at range 24. However, they are strength 7, AP 0. They've not got the anti-air vehicle rule for this one either, so that's not that good. The Catan powers on paper look like a lot of fun. We can choose one of these, by the way, per turn. We don't get all of them. If we got all of them, I might pay the 425 points. We have Antimatter Meteor. There's D6 plus 3 shots. We don't need line of sight, but we've got towering anyway, so I don't really think we need it. Strength 10, AP 3, lovely flat damage. This gun is impressive. There's no questions about it. It's a good gun. Then we have Cosmic Fire, 3d6, Strength 6, AP 2, Damage 1, Devastating Wounds, Torrent, ignores cover. Very impressive. But the Particle Whip on the Monolith does pretty similar, shoots further, has pretty much the same rules, slightly less AP, but does more damage. So, not that good. Time's Arrow looks amazing, but it's one shot. It hits on a 2. So let's say we hit. The problem is we're going to get committed at this point. If we roll a 1, we're going to want to CP it. Let's say we hit. We look at it, strength 3. Oh no, that's terrible. But it's not, because it's precision, anti-character, and devastating wounds. We have a gleeful smile on our faces here, because on a 4+, we wound even Mr. Swarmlord. We roll a 4+. We're feeling good. AP2 puts him on his invulnerable save. Let's say he fails it. Our opponent will CP it. Why will they CP it? Because it's 6 damage, 6 mortal wounds. It's great if it goes off. I would love to use this just to snipe things from across the table. That would make me feel so good. But unfortunately, I know I'm going to roll a 1. I know I'm going to CP it. I'll probably hit. My opponent will CP his invulnerable save, and they're going to pass. But you know what? If you put the comments in, I'll get the model on the table. Let's move on to the Spanners. What are the Spanners? The Spanners are the vehicles that aren't going to be dealing loads of damage, but they might just be useful. So let's have a look what we have here. We have The original chariot. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break it to you, but it was not the Lehman Russ commander with his chainsaw that invented this strategy. It was the Necrons 60 million years ago with the Catacomb command barge. They got all excited. They realized that they could fly over and then sweep their little stick around and hit absolutely nothing. However, I will point out at this point that the Necron commanders completely messed up. Why is that? Because the Lehman Russ commander had the sense to bring a Lehman Russ, which has a battle cannon, 2 heavy bolters, and a las cannon. Our Necron commander over here brought practically nothing. He might have a war scythe, but with 4 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 8, AP 3, okay, fine, that is good. Damage 2 is not good. What are you going to put this guy into? Because he's going to get beaten the living snot out of. He has 9 wounds at toughness 8. He can only realistically be wounded on 4s because of advanced quantum shieldings. But he doesn't even have lone operative. So he's basically going to run forward, everything's going to shoot him, and he's going to die. I don't think he's going to see that much play for me this edition. The Taxi. This is one of the least spoken about models ever. But actually, it's fantastic. It's fast at movement 10. It's got Necron warriors in it. You don't have to. You could sneak a character in there and just bring this boy along if you wanted, but I'm giving you bad points for that. Toughness 9 is strong. Save 3 plus is good, but it's got a 4 upon vulnerable save. And then it's got 14 wounds as well. It's actually really tanky. It's got the firepower of a warrior squad in that it can shoot 20 shots if you get within 12 or 10 shots normally. But the real sneaky thing here is that in your opponent's turn, if you shoot the warriors, this guy reanimates them. If you've got a reanimator nearby and your warriors are on an objective, that's 2d3 plus 3 when your opponent kills a model. That doesn't mean that you then can't use the stratagem to reanimate again. If you've got an overlord in there, if you've seen my enhancements video, there's a lot of ways of buffing the warriors. You could get up to 3 reanimations. That's I can't even do the maths. It's 2d3 plus 3 times, potentially over the course of a battle round. That's horrible. You're not killing these warrior blobs. Right, let's move on. The Flying Taxi, the Night Scythe. Good stat line, toughness 9, 3 plus save, 12 wounds. I say good, it's reasonable. The problem is it's costly. It can transport things that we have no other way of transporting, like Lich Guard, but that means you're not realistically arriving until turn 3. You drop them off, they can't charge. So you're talking turn 3. That's far too late a commitment for a close combat squad, particularly in a shooty edition. I'm tempted to mess around with the idea of having a Night Scythe with some Immortals in, dropping them off, having them shoot everything, and then use the translocation beam to jump back inside again. I quite like that. That could be quite cute. I could quite have some fun with that. I might lose a couple when it gets blown up on the next turn because it doesn't have an invulnerable save. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to do these things for a bit of fun. The Canoptic Spider has a reasonable stat line. Movement 5 makes him about average for a Necron. Toughness 7 is good. 3 plus save is good. 6 wounds is good. The Particle Beamer is quite cute because it's got 2. So that's 2d6 plus blast. If we have 2 spiders, that's 4d6 plus blast. That can rack up to quite a lot of shots. And it has devastating wounds. Its ballistic skill is reasonable and the strength is reasonable. So that's a large number of low quality shots for a reasonable points cost. I say reasonable, they are 75 points a pop. If we have 2 of these in a unit, they can bring back 2 spider bases a turn. But again, the Scarab bases, they're not what they were. They don't have any objective control. They're quite good for screening, but beyond that, so I'm not so sure if this guys are going to be any good for this. They can give Necron vehicles a 6 plus feel no pain ability. Don't like 6 plus feel no pains personally. It feels a bit swingy. It doesn't come up very often. 5 plus is fantastic, but 6 plus is just not in the realm of mathematical helpfulness in my mind. But maybe it's worth running one of these behind your Monolith. It's going to make it pretty much invulnerable at that point. And as a nice little interesting point, the Necrons have got some of the most powerful anti-warp technology in the lore. This model is the only model that I can find in the index that has any type of psychic defense at all. We don't really need it in this edition, thankfully, because this is the only unit. I think even the Silent King has actually lost his anti-psychic defense in this edition. Maybe it's all in other monoliths that are somewhere else. Maybe it's in space. I'm not quite sure. It's definitely not on the table. Finally, we have the Spanner Man. He's not a vehicle. Well, why have I put him in this vehicle review? Because he's probably going to be on the table somewhere. Maybe he's going to be in a warrior unit. Now, what he can do is he buffs any of the canoptic units nearby. That's worth remembering. That can come up. More significantly, though, is if he's on the table running around, don't forget about him. Don't forget to put him near your vehicles. Why is that? Because if he's within 3 inches of a vehicle, he can repair them. He can repair other things as well, but he can repair your vehicles. That means that if you reanimate your vehicle in your command phase and you have a reanimator nearby and you have a technomancer nearby, you're getting 3d6 repairs per turn. That can really upset your opponent if you roll average. That's 6 wounds back on. Because don't forget, a lot of our vehicles are toughness 9. They have 4 up and vulnerable saves. And now you're repairing them for up to 6 to 9 damage per turn. Don't forget about this guy. He can make a difference. Final little wrap up. Once again, not too late to get involved with our campaign for our patrons. Not too late to get involved at all in the launch, which will be in a couple of weeks. People will be able to get involved at any point along. Pop into Discord, talk to our members, have a chat with the team about the upcoming campaign. We are giving away 2 more combat patrols this month to our patrons. A reminder, not the ones here. You can choose. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you very much for listening.